Hey, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com coming to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. On the line right now with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. What's good, Bone? How you been, man?
Man, I've been good. I just had had to go get my teeth cleaned this AM, so it was those are always fun trips to the dentist. So it was. Other than that, things are good. And unfortunately, the other day, my fourth grade football team fell in the Super Bowl.
You
Our
guys didn't
only
win?
our only loss of the
Oh
entire
my
season.
goodness.
It was a
Sounds similar to a team I know from my.
Yeah, it was a tough situation, especially when you go you go all the way undefeated and you feel like you have an unbelievable chance to win it, and just some things just didn't go your way in the championship game, and obviously that happened to Alabama last year, and so I've experienced it twice in the last in less than a year. So it's a tough situation, but maybe we'll bounce back next year and win it all.
All right, let's get right to it, man. There's a lot of recruiting information to get to. Alabama had a ton of guys in town over the weekend for Alabama and LSU. I mean, the sidelines were literally packed. I was looking down on the field, and I could just see big name after big name. So let's start out with talking about the official visitors who were on campus and kind of give us a recap on what you know from their visits.
Yeah, I think most of the big names that were in town were on the official visit list this past weekend, and we can start talking about Jalen Waddell. I mean, Jalen Waddell, one of the premier wide receivers in the country out of Houston, Texas, has been a major target for the Crimson Tide for a long time, and I think he's going to wait a little while before he makes a decision. I'm hearing that it's very possible that he could take it all the way down until National Signing Day. But I think Alabama's in very good shape right there. I think Alabama's the leader, and everybody that I've talked to, even people that are out in Texas who cover the schools out there, they all say that he's probably Alabama's to lose, and Nick Saban will have an in-home visit with him in December or January, and he still has a few official visits left, but I think Alabama's comfortably in the lead for him, and that's huge because he has been their top target at the wide receiver position for a very long time. So I think his visit went extremely well this past weekend. Uh, Tanner McKee, a Rivals 100 quarterback out of California, flew in for his official. Great time in Tuscaloosa. Now, he has an interesting situation. We've talked about it a lot on the message board on BamaInsider.com about how he will go on a 2-year Mormon mission before he enrolls in college. So it's very possible that he may not enroll until 2020 or 2021. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But Alabama obviously is in his top 5 with him taking an official visit. So we'll see what happens. But I think Alabama's certainly a contender for him. Alabama had a few defensive back official visitors over the weekend. Nadab Joseph, Rivals 100 cornerback out of Miami, and then Savion Smith, a 4-star safety out of Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College. Both those guys, definitely expect them to be in Alabama's class. I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. We may see Savion Smith decide to wait until December on the when the junior college guys have their national signing day, which I believe is December the 20th this year. So kind of wait. We may not see a decision for Savion until then, at least publicly. But I think Alabama's in very good shape with him. And then also you have Nadab Joseph, who is probably going to make a decision relatively soon. It would really shock me if he goes another week without making a commitment. But there's very good chance that he could have already made a commitment, but at least announcing it publicly. But definitely think that Alabama is in very good shape there.
We're talking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. You're listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play. Just look for BamaInsider.com podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Bone, I wanted to talk to you about Justyn Ross. I know a lot of people have been asking about him rather on the message boards. What's the latest on Justyn Ross? Is Alabama going to miss out on one of the top talents in Alabama?
Well, I saw a story on Rivals today, and it was a debate uh, between uh, Mike Farrell and our Clemson reporter about which school was going to end up signing Justyn Ross, number one receiver in the state of number one overall prospect in the state of Alabama, five-star recruit, and it was debating between whether or not he was going to go to Auburn or to Clemson. Well, I think it's definitely in the race. Will he end up going to Alabama? I'm not sure. I think he really likes Clemson a lot. It would not surprise me if that's his school of choice. I think he's built a really good relationship with the coaches there. They have a really good tradition of developing wide receivers, at least over the last 10 years, and I think they've got a good chance to sign him. He likes Auburn. And Auburn's very close by, but he just hasn't been to Auburn as much as you would think. He's visited to Auburn a couple times, but he's attended 4 Alabama games this season. That's more than any of the other schools combined. So he's been to Alabama a good bit. But we'll see what happens. Alabama obviously has some good wide receiver targets that are still out there. Guys who I think they're going to end up signing, like Jalen Waddell, Jacob Copeland, who I think they'll end up flipping from Florida. They have Xavier Williams and Slade Bolden both on the commitment list. There wasn't really a big push to sign, 4 to 5 to 6 wide receivers in this year's class. Alabama had such a good receiving class last year with Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy, and Tyrell Shavers, 4 receivers in last year's class. So, if they end up only signing 3 or 4 wide receivers, I think they're going to be just fine at the position. But, Justyn Ross still very much in play for the Crimson Tide.
Now, you mentioned watch Savion Smith, Nadab Joseph. Those guys are on commitment watch. But who are some other guys that we really need to start paying attention to as we get deeper into this recruiting time in mid-November and working our way to the first signing day, as you mentioned, which will be on December 20th?
For months we talk about so many different guys and guys that we feel like are going to end up in Alabama's class, and 3 guys that I think Alabama fans really need to pay close attention to over the course of the next few months. One is Emory Jones, 5-star quarterback from Georgia, committed to Ohio State. Has made a few trips to Tuscaloosa this season. Was in Atlanta for the Florida State game. There's a lot of interest there. Early on we thought that it was just kind of him just going on a trip to Tuscaloosa just to kind of enjoy the recruiting game a little bit. But there was kind of never any doubt in mind that he was going to stick with Ohio State. But now it seems like there's a legit possibility of him flipping his commitment. So we're paying really close attention to Emory Jones. He's in the playoffs right now with his high school team. He doesn't want to make any final decision just yet. I think he's going to wait until after his senior season. So we may see something happen sometime in December regarding a final decision. New guy who just recently was offered a few weeks ago, Christian Barmore, a defensive lineman from Philadelphia. There wasn't a lot of information about him. He was a 2-star offensive lineman, and Alabama started evaluating him this season when they saw him work out on the defensive line, and he's just an absolute monster. He's 6'5", 290 pounds, extremely athletic, and a big target for the Crimson Tide. Alabama has there's so many defensive linemen that are kind of on the recruiting board right now. He's really at the top of the list. I mean, of all the guys that I've kind of we've been talking about on Bama Insider. He's one of those few guys who actually has the opportunity to commit. A lot of these other guys, they're going to have to wait. They're kind of sitting right behind him, and Alabama's waiting to see what he ends up doing. But I think they've got a good shot to land him. They talk to him every single day. He's planning on visiting after the season, so we'll probably see an official visit from him in December. But if I were to pick another defensive lineman to end up in Alabama's class, I certainly have him probably at the top of the list. Then the third guy that, and right now we're really kind of talking about guys that we weren't talking about before the season started. These are guys who are really kind of new to a lot of people's ears, and we're thinking that with Alabama's got a great chance to sign them. This third guy that I wanted to bring up, Brandon Cahu. He's a four-star linebacker out of Reno, Nevada. He is announced, or excuse me, he's not announced. I don't know when he's going to announce, but he was in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for an official visit. That's a name to get to know because Alabama is very high on him. He's committed to BYU. He visited Alabama during the summer, earned an offer, and he's been having a heck of a senior season. He's a major target for the Crimson Tide. I was kind of thinking that Alabama was only going to take maybe one more linebacker, which J.J. Peterson, still very high on Alabama's wish list. But Brandon Cahu is another guy that they would certainly take. So they can end up with a couple more linebackers in this year's recruiting class. But we'll see what happens. But I think there's a good chance that Alabama can flip him away from his commitment to BYU.
We're talking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play. Just look for the BamaInsider.com podcast. Bone, before we let you go, I wanted to talk to you about an article that I wrote yesterday. It was titled 17 Freshmen Have Seen Playing Time at Alabama. Now, when you're talking to these recruits, we know that a lot of the opposing coaches mentioned you're not going to see the field at Alabama for your freshman, sophomore, junior season because there's so much talent ahead of you. That's really not the case, right? I mean, look, 17 guys have played at Alabama in their freshman year. You surprised by that?
No, not at all. I mean, this past year's freshman class was probably the most talented freshman class that Nick Saban signed since he's been at Alabama. Regardless of the talent that's there, I mean, these guys are coming in hungry. They're ready to compete. They know what it takes. They know what Alabama expects. And it's funny. I saw someone some fan tweet at me yesterday that of course these freshmen are getting to play because they're going in getting garbage playing time at the end of the fourth quarter. Well, that's just, if you watch Alabama football or know anything about it, that's just simply not the case. You're seeing a lot of guys play significantly. Henry Ruggs, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy. Regardless of how deep the Alabama receiving corps was, you're seeing a lot of these receivers get on the field and make plays. You're seeing Dylan Moses, Chris Allen. These guys are getting on the field. These guys were getting on the field before the injuries happened, and obviously now they're going to have to step up and contribute a lot more and make big plays. And Alabama's going to have to depend on them the rest of the way. LeBron Ray. I think Alabama's intentions with Ray, I think they had intended to redshirt him and just let him develop. But I think once he arrived on campus, he's grown a couple inches since he's arrived in Tuscaloosa. He's getting bigger, and I think there was just no way Alabama couldn't have him out on the field. I mean, he's just an absolute freak, and he's going to have just an unbelievable college career if he can stay healthy. We're seeing, we see Najee Harris get in there every single game, and we all know how deep Alabama's backfield is. Obviously, Tua has gotten in a good bit, and he may get in there when Alabama's up, 3 touchdowns, but so what? Only one quarterback is going to play anyway. So, we're seeing a lot of talent that's being, showcased this year from that freshman class. And I can always remember, a few guys like Mika Fitzpatrick and Deron Payne. Those guys used to tell me that these other schools were telling them they would not see the field at Alabama until they were juniors or maybe even seniors. That Alabama's just so stacked at these positions that they're just not going to ever play. Well, both those guys were major contributors when they were freshmen, and I think it gives these guys a little bit of motivation. Not just a little bit, a lot of motivation when they hear from. And I think it may hurt these other schools when these other schools tell them, well, you're not good enough to play right now at Alabama. Well, you can come in and play right away here. I think it definitely gives these guys motivation, and obviously they've come in and had a lot of success. And I think with the way these freshmen are playing this year, other kids from around the country, whether they're a senior or a junior or sophomore, they're seeing that Alabama's going to play the best players regardless of their classification. So we'll see what happens, but there's no doubt Alabama's going to continue to recruit well, and they're going to have to, especially with injuries happen every single year, and we've seen that especially this year at Alabama. And you've got to have guys that are young that can come in and step up and contribute. So I think it gives a lot of kids motivation, and I think Alabama's going to be just fine in recruiting top kids, regardless of how many players they've got at those positions in Tuscaloosa.
Last thing, Bone, before we let you go, Alabama will take on Mississippi State in Starkville on Saturday, 6 p.m. on ESPN. What's your take on the game? Alabama 9-0, ranked number 2 in the college football playoff rankings behind Georgia, 14.5 favorite over the Bulldogs. What you thinking?
Well, it's always a tough game, especially after the LSU game, because the kids are just beat up. I mean, it is an absolute war, regardless of what the records are or anything. I mean, those are two of the most physical. Alabama and LSU are two of the most physical teams in the entire country. Now, Mississippi State, they have a good team. They've kind of been Jekyll and Hyde this year. I mean, you go and you blow out A&M, you go and blow out LSU, but then you lose some interesting games. I mean, you get blown out by Georgia, you get blown out by Auburn. Is Alabama going to go over there to Starkville and blow them out? We'll see. I remember a few years ago there was a lot of high expectations going in for Mississippi State when Alabama traveled to Starkville with Dak Prescott over there, and Alabama just took them to the woodshed. I think Alabama knows that this could potentially be a trap game, and they're definitely not looking ahead to any other games. I think they're focused on Mississippi State. They know it's a tough opponent. They know what they've done this year. But will it shock me if Alabama wins by 21 or more points? It won't shock me at all. I think they're going to be pretty motivated. But we're also going to have to wait and see how these injuries end up affecting them. If at all. I mean, because it's going to be a physical game over in Starkville. So we'll see what happens. But I got pretty good confidence that Alabama's going to go over there and get the W.
For continuing coverage on recruiting or Alabama football in general, check out BamaInsider.com. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Andrew Bone and Tony Sakalis. We make up BamaInsider.com. Join the website. Now is the perfect time to subscribe. SEC Championship now in sight. Alabama taking on Mississippi State. We got you locked and loaded at BamaInsider.com.